This week's Parshas is Parshas Behar and Bechukosai. In Bechukosai, it goes through the Teichacha, like everyone knows. Really, usually it falls out right before Shavuos, the Shabbos before Shavuos, but this year it doesn't for some reason. So in the Teichacha, Perek Chavav, Pasuk Lamed Aleph, the Pasuk says, "V'nasati es arechem charba, v'hashimoisi es mikdashechem, and I will destroy your mikdash. Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem, and I will not smell in the Ariach Nichochachem that you bring." So Rashi says, "Vashimoisi es mikdashechem, I'll destroy your mikdash." Sagt Rashi, "Yachol min karbonis." I would think this is from the karbonis, that we won't be able to bring karbonis. Keshu Aimer Velo Ariach, when it says, "I will not smell," Hare karbonis amurim. The karbonis that's referring to karbonis. Hamani mekayim hashimoisis mikdashechem. What am I mekayim hashimoisis mikdashechem? Min hagedudiyos. What are gedudiyos? Shayaroi shal Yisrael. They're the caravans. Shayimiskachos v'noyados lavesham. That would come to the Beis Hamikdash. That would come to Yerushalayim. So the caravans. That's what it's referring to. The pasuk vashimoisis mikdashechem is referring to the caravans of Klal Yisrael that come to the Yerushalayim. And then the next pasuk, Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem, is referring to the karbonis. Now, why doesn't Rashi just learn Pashup Pshat, Vashimoisi es Mikdashechem means, and I will destroy your Beis HaMikdash, and then Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem means the karbonis? Because Rashi already in Pasuk Yates, the Pasuk says, V'shavarti es ga'oin uzchem, I will break your pride. Zakt Rashi, v'shavarti es ga'oin uzchem ze Beis Hamikdash. This is the Beis Hamikdash. So Memela Pashup Rashi l'shitasei can't learn Vashimoisis Mikdashechem means I will destroy your Beis Hamikdash, because the Teichacha already said earlier I will break the Beis Hamikdash. So Elamai, when it says Vashimoisis Mikdashechem, it's referring to something else. It's referring to the caravans. Interesting klala that the caravans won't come there, meaning there won't be people in coming to Yerushalayim. I saw Remeir Halevi Salvechik Zatzal says that if you look at the Targum Taka learns not like this. The Targum learns in the pasuk before V'shavarti es ga'oin uzchem, zak the Targum ve'espar yas yikar tak pechain. It just means I will break your pride. You will not have pride. And then in our pasuk, in pasuk Lamed Aleph, Vashimoisius Mikdashechem, zak the Targum unkelis ve'etzte yas makdashechain. I will break the Beis Hamikdash v'la ekabel berava korban kinishaschain, and I will not be mekabel the korbanos. So the Targum unkelis taka, he's chaylik on Rashi. Rashi is coming from a Teres Kayanim, but the Targum unkelis learns V'shavarti ga'oin uzchem is referring to something else. It's referring just that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to break our pride. We're not going to have any pride. And the pasuk in Perek Lamed Aleph, Vashimoisis Mikdashechem, is like Pashup Pshat, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to break our Beis HaMikdash, and then afterwards, Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem, I'm not going to be mekabel your karbonis. So that's the two mahalchim here, the Rashi l'shitasei, the Targum l'shitasei. But either way, l'chayra, there's a bambakasha that you could ask. That Bein Lefi Rashi, that V'shavarti ga'oin uzchem is referring to the Beis HaMikdash, or the Targum, that V'hashimoisi es Mikdashechem is referring to the Beis HaMikdash. What's the nacha klala of V'lo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem, that I will not be mekabel your karbonis? If the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, there is no karbonis. So why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu legging to nacha klala that V'lo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem? What's licked in this klala that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to be mekabel our karbonis? If there's no more Beis HaMikdash, there's no more karbonis. What's tutzach da? It's a pashat bambekasha. So I wasn't the first one to have this kasha, Baruch Hashem. The Nitziv in Hamik Davar says a moedik teretz. He says that even though the Beis Hamikdash is still around, is not around, but Lamaisa we know that it could be the Mizbeach will be in its place, and you could be makriv on it. And the taka was like this 52 years after the Churban Bayis Sheni. When there was no Beis Hamikdash, the Mizbeach was still around, and they brought on it Karban Pesach, like the Gemara in Sanhedrin says on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. The Gemara says that they would be ma'aber the shana, they would make a ibriyar in order for the Karban Pesach. The lashon of the Gemara is Tanur Abanan. Ein ma'abernes hashana, you're not allowed to make a ibriyar elim kein haitzet tzricha, unless it was needed mipnei adrachim mipnei agesharim, because of the roads, umipnei tanurei psachim, and because of the ovens of Karban Pesachs. And Rashi says shetzaylim bahem peschayim, that they used to roast the Karban Pesach. And this is Reb Gamliel. This is the Zman of Reb Gamliel, and Reb Gamliel was after the Churban. So you see, they brought a Karban Pesach even after the Churban Habayis. Zakt the Netziv that only the Karban Pesach they brought, but all other Karbanos they did not bring. What's the pshat? He says a hafla de gezach, that only the Karban Pesach, it never says Reach Nichochachem. It never says that it's going to be a nice smell for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But all the other karbanos, it says Reach Nichochachem. Even by a chatos, there's a Reach Nichochachem. Chatos, Behar, Meiser. He says all the karbanos, he brings psukim, all the karbanos, it says Reach Nichochachem. So he says, Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem. Well, what is that saying? That even after the Churban Habayis, where there could be a Mizbeach, because Kedusha Rishon, Kitchel Shai, Kitchel Asad Lavai, and the Mizbeach is even when the Mizbeach was still there in the Makam HaMikdash. But still, Lo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem, you will not, you are usher to bring all other karbanos that say Reach Nichochachem. Only a Karban Pesach, which doesn't say Reach Nichochachem, that is what they were allowed to bring. So this is mamish a moedik azach. So we asked the kasha, what's the pasuk coming to say? Vashi ma'asis mikdashechem, I destroy Beis Hamikdash, v'lo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem, and I won't accept your karbanos if there's no Beis Hamikdash. What karbanos do we have? Zak the Netziv. Yeah, because there was Mizbeach still around even after the Churban. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying it's usher to bring other karbanos. It's usher to bring them, but only the ones that say Reach Nichochachem. Karban Pesach, which does not say Reach Nichochachem, that you're allowed to bring. So I heard in the name of Reb Gershon Ribner a fascinating pshat in this Netziv, that why is it that all other karbanos have Reach Nichochachem and the Karban Pesach does not have Reach Nichochachem? So he stellt zu a moedik Meshech Chachma. Reb Meir Simcha in his Akdama in Vayikra, he brings the famous machlokes Rambam and Ramban. What's the time of karbanos? So everybody knows that the Rambam in the Meira says that the reason for karbanos was la'afuke, the goyim that were bringing karbanos for the Avodah Zarah. So, or even the Rambam says more. He says they were being ovid those animals. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says those animals, they're being ovid. Bring them for me. So that's the Rambam in the Meira that he says that's the tachlis of karbanos. La'afuke from Avodah Zarah. The Ramban says a sharf lashon. The Ramban, this is in Perak Aleph Pasuk Tes in Vayikra. The Ramban says, "Vinei heim divrei havai." These are words of Hevel. Eich yirapu shever gadol bekusha rabba al nekala. Yaseh shulchan Hashem megoyel. He's making HaKadosh Baruch Hu's shulchan disgusting. She'enei rak lahaitzi miliban shal rishayim v'tipshei eilam. It's only to be mitzi from the leiv of Rishayim and tipshim. And he says, fakert, he says, if you're taking their God and being makrivit HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's even being machshivit, because like the Ramban goes all over Parshas Vayikra, all over his Mahalach in Chumash, is that Avada, the Goyim, they were Maimin in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but they were Ovid the middleman. They were Ovid the in-between. They thought that they should be Ovid the Malach that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put in charge of their nation, in charge of their country. So Avada they're Maimin in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but they're just not. They were Ovid the middleman, the in between Malach. So if you're taking their God, which they think is the middleman, and being makivit HaKadosh Baruch Hu, fakert, you're being machshavit. You're not coming lafuke like the Rambam saying. You're being machshavit. The Goyim will be like, oh look, our God, you're giving to your God. So Zok the Ramban. The Ramban says under Mahalach in Karbonis. First he says that you're supposed to think that it's you who really should be shechted. You who the dam should really be taken from you. It should be thrown onto the mizbeach. That's what he says. First pshat. And the second pshat he says is a side nelam. It's Seidus HaTorah. And the way how the Meshech Chochmah Meir Simcha says the side, he says who inyan electri ruchni, that it's like a ruchniistic electricity. Asher bepu'ulais hakayin yaseh gevayis by lama shainim ki yadua. That by the kayin doing stuff with the carbon, he does tons of stuff in the lamas al yainim. That's how Meir Simcha says the side, that it's like a electri ruchni. So Zakter Meir Simcha in the Hakdama to Seder Vayikra, he says, "V'ula yesh lachriya." Maybe you could be machriya between the Rambam and Ramban. What's his achra? He says that karbanos of a bama are only to be marchik avodah zarah. Any carbon that was brought on a bama, that was like the Rambam in the Meir, that it's lafuke from avodah zarah. But the karbanis in the Beis HaMikdash, avada, those are lekarvay lamus ulechaber daidim. Those are like the Ramban's electri ruchni. So he says that by a bama, he brings a raya to his yisoid, is because the Gemara in Parshas, the Mishnah in Parshas says, ein reach nichayach bebama ktana. There's no reach nichayach by a bama. There's only reach nichayach when you bring a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash. What's the pshat in this? Why is there only a reach nichayach to a nachas ruach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when you bring a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash and not when you bring a carbon on the bama? So he says, like what he's saying, it's very geshmak, because a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash is electri ruchni. It's to be mekar ve'lamis. So that's a nachas ruach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But a carbon on a bama, which is only lafuke from avodah zarah, that there's no reach nichayach. Azezak the Meshech Chochmah. And he says, ubazen is Galilee side. With this yisoid, he figured out a secret. What's the secret? The secret is that there's a Shitas Rabbeinu Chaim Kayin, Shitas HaTaisvis in Megillah Daf Yud, that says, afilu like the man Amar, Kedusha Rishayna Kitchel Shaita, that the Kedusha from the Beis HaMikdash was not Kaddish forever, like Kitchel Asad Lavai, it's still Aser Bizman Azeh to bring on a bama. It's still Aser to bring on a bama. Pashtus, you learn, if you go through the Gemaras all over Shas, the Pashup Shad is that if there's no Kedusha nowadays in the Makam HaMikdash, then you could bring bamas, you could bring a carbon on a bama anywhere, because the only time there was a issa to bring on a bama is when there's a Beis HaMikdash. But when there's no Beis HaMikdash, you're allowed to bring outside, you're allowed to bring on a bama. But Zakt Rabbeinu Chaim Kain, a Rishon, a Bala Taisvis, that no, even if like Kitchel Asid Lavai, still by a bama, it's asid to be makriv. So what's the pshat? Why should that be? We can't bring a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash, so why can't we bring a carbon achutz in the Beis HaMikdash? Zakt Meir Simcha Hafla V'Fela, that what's the whole tachlis of a karbonis on a bama? The whole tachlis of a carbon on a bama is lafuke from avodah zarah, like the Rambam in the Meir. So we all know the Gemara in Yuma that Anshe Knesset HaGedayla were mevatel the Yetzer Hara of avodah zarah. They were mevatel it. There's no more Yetzer Hara of avodah zarah. So Aybazei, there's no more tachlis in bringing karbonis on a bama. Sagt mir Simcha Hafla v'fela bazen is Galilee side. This is the side of the secret, the Pnimius HaTorah of Rabbeinu Chaim Kayin in Taisus and Megillah, is because if there's no more Yetzirah Avodah Zarah, there's no more need for Karbanos Anabama. That's why it's usher to bring Karbanos Anabama nowadays, even if you hold like Kitchalas Lava and there's no Kedusha in the Beis HaMikdash, it's still us to bring Anabama because the whole tachlis of bringing Karbanos Anabama is no longer. So Gershon Ribner wanted to say that it could be that's the pshat in this Hamik Davar that's showing us that there's no Reach Nichayach by Karban Pesach. What does it say by Karban Pesach? What was the first time the Eibishter was mitzaveh? Mishchu k'chulachem tzayin. Right? The tachlis of Rashi says over there, the tachlis was because the Mitzrayim's God was the tle, was the sheep. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Mishchu yedechem in Avodah Zarah. Take away from Avodah Zarah. How? By taking the sheep that they're being ovid and using it for a Karban Pesach. So Kumt Dais, Zaktiv Gershon Ribner, that even though all karbanis, you have a machlekes between the Rambam and the Ramban, what's the tachlis of the karban? Is it for Avodah Zarah? Is it elektri ruchni? Is it to that you should be ki'ilu, you're the one being shechted? But that's all by all other karbanis. And like the Meshech Chochma is saying that maybe it's really both, and it's difference between a bama and the Beis HaMikdash. But a Karban Pesach, that Kulei Amaloi Pligi, the Tachlis was Mishchu Yedechem in Avodah Zarah. So if that's the case, there's no Reach Nichayach. If that's the case, there's no Reach Nichayach by a Karban Pesach. Like the Meshech Chochma is saying, by a Bama, there's no Reach Nichayach. Why is there no Reach Nichayach? Because the Tachlis is just to take away from Avodah Zarah. So Karban Pesach, there's also if the Tachlis was to take away from Avodah Zarah, then there's no Reach Nichayach. That's the pshat in this Hamek Davar. Ayin Sham, he says that he brings that in Devarim, he says a Geshmak pshat in Psukim, in that Begalus, the Karban Pesach is the only one you could bring. He says very Geshmak pshat in Psukim in Devarim. So this sounds very geschmack, but l'maisa, l'chayra, it's not. It's very not pashut. Why is it not pashut? Because first of all, there's a Shalos Tshuvas Maria Levi who came after the Netziv, and he says that Verzocht, who said this is the case? First of all, just because it says Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem, not everything in the Teichecha was Niskayim. Not everything had to happen. So he brings a medrash that the medrash in Eicha and the medrash in Bamidbar, that not every single part of the Teichecha has to happen. So you're saying Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem is a iser to bring karbanis that say Reach Nichayach. Who said not everything has to happen? And he says the Mishnah that says that you have to bring L'Shem Reach, the Mishnah in Zvachim, in Beis Shammai, Perak Beis Shammai, that says you have to bring L'Shem Reach Nichayach, it's a mitzvah to do it, but who says it's ma'akiv? That if you can't bring Reach Nichayach, then you can't bring a karban? Fakar, the Mishnah Melech in Perak Daled Min Maisa Karbanis Halacha Yud Aleph says that if you shechted not L'Shem Reach, the karban's still kosher b'di'evet. So kol shekain nowadays where we won't have Reach Nichayach, so kol shekain we could still bring a karban. And he says even more so. He says Bahadi Kafshi Derachman Alamalan. Who are you to say that the secrets of the Eibishter? He says, Chazal say, Miyayim shecharav Beis HaMikdash, from the day the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Ninalu Sharei Tefillah, the gates of davening were closed. So does that mean we shouldn't daven? No more davening. Yeah, that would be very easy. right? No more shachus mincha, no more davening because the gates are closed. No, the avada, that's not what it means. No, you still have to daven. So too here, when the Eibishter says Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem, doesn't make it that now it's also to bring karbanos. So Pashat and Svar, because the Netziv doesn't have really rayas. He has that one Gemara in Sanhedrin, but the Gemara doesn't say that all other karbanos are also. So Azay Frek the Maria Levi. Tzvi Pesach Frank, in his Sefer Har Tzvi, asks an even stronger question on the Netziv. Because there's a fascinating Ramban in this week's Parsha. The Ramban says that the ganze Teichecha over here in Parshas Bechukosai was for the Galus Rishon, was for the 70 years that Klal Yisrael was in Bavel. The Teichecha in Parshas Kisavai, that's for the Churban Bayis Sheni. So the Ramban Mamish, he goes through the whole Parsha, and he stells avek all the psukim, how it works, that this Parsha Bechukosai was all for the Galus Rishon, all for Galus Bavel, and Parshas Kisavai is all for the Galus of the Churban Bayis Sheni. It's Hafladik Ramban. He's Ma'arich Ba'arichas Neira, as usual, but it's beautiful. So Zakter Ramban, the Ramban says, Teich Dvarav, he says, V'husha Amar Vashi Moisis Mikdashechem Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem Yasria Bahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu's warning L'salik Mehem Mikdashay V'kibul HaKarbanis Shahayu Lei L'ratzon B'Mikdashahu. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is warning us that he's going to take away the Beis HaMikdash and he's not going to be Mekabel the Karbanis L'ratzon in the first Galus. Then he says, when he's referring to the Teichecha in Mishnah Torah and Parshas Kisavai, he says, the Teichecha over there doesn't mention the Beis HaMikdash Ariach Nichochachem at all. V'lo hizker sham HaMikdash Ariach Nichochachem kasher hizker kan. Over there it doesn't mention it. Why? Shaloi haisa ha'esh yeredes v'yicheles ha'karbanos b'bayis ha'sheni. There was no fire, like the Gemara says, the difference, there was no fire that came down. This is one of the differences between Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. There was no fire that came down. There was no fire that came down in the Bayis Sheni. So the Zakter Ramban that there was no Reach Nichayach in the second Beis HaMikdash at all. That's why the Teichecha in Parshas Kisavai HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't reiterate Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem. Still, did they stop bringing karbanos in the whole second Beis HaMikdash? No chance. They brought karbanos. Why? Because even though there was no Reach Nichochachem, once the Eibishter said by Galus Rishon, in Parshas Bechukosai, there's no more Reach Nichochachem, still you have to bring karbanos. So Zakter Tzvi Pesach Frank, this Ramban is often not like, he says it's not like the Marshal Afandri, not sure who that is, but it's not like the Netziv. The Chaya often a raya, not like the Netziv. So this Netziv it's geschmack. There's the Mahalach of Reb Gershon Ribner, which is very geschmack to say pshat in this pasuk and to say pshat in what the Netziv was saying, but l'chayra the Ramban is often not like the Netziv's Yisait, that even when karbanos don't have Reich Nichayach, you're still allowed to bring them, like they brought them in the second Beis HaMikdash. So too nowadays, even though the Eibishter is saying there won't be Reich Nichayach, but you could still bring all karbanos. You could still bring them if you could find a way. So I saw that the Meshech Chachma, Reb Meir Simcha, he says his own mahalach. He says like this. He says, that Rabbeinu Chaim Kayin in Taisus and Megillah that I've said in the past, and that the Turei Even in Megillah was mamish mishabeach the shita. He says, like Rabbeinu Chaim Kayin, I could say pshat in this pasuk. Why? What's the pshat? Zak there. The pshat is, Vashi Moisias Mikdashechem, I will destroy your Beis HaMikdash, Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem. What are the two things? Zogt the Remeir Simcha, the two things are Vashi Moisias Mikdashechem, you won't be able to bring karbanos. Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem is that you won't be able to bring on a bama. Like Rabbeinu Chaim is saying, the Shita of the Rishonim in Taisus and Megillah, that everybody agrees nowadays it's aser to bring on a bama. So Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem is saying that not only will you not be able to bring karbanos in the Beis HaMikdash, you won't be able to bring karbanos anywhere, even on a bama, and that everyone agrees. So this is l'chayra geshmak pshat from Remeir Simcha, a different pshat, not exactly like the Netziv. So when I saw this Remeir Simcha, this right away it jumped out to me that this Remeir Simcha is seiser what he says in the Akdama to Parshas Vayikra. What did he say? He said there is no Reach Nichayach by a bama. And that's why by a bama it's like the karbanis are like the Rambam in Moira that it's just Lafuk Avodah Zarah. So there is no Reach Nichayach in a bama. So how could this pasuk say Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem refer to the fact that you won't be able to bring on a bama? There is no Reach Nichayach by a bama. The Eibishter is saying, I won't have Reach Nichayach from your bamas. There is no Reach Nichayach by a bama. Remeir Simcha says to himself, L'chayra, it's a pella. And there's also another Remeir Simcha in Parshas Noach that he says by Vayiva Noach Mizbeach, and Noach built a Mizbeach. And the pasuk says over there, Vayarach Hashem es Reach HaNichayach, that Hashem smelt the Reach Nichayach. So Zakter Meir Simcha, that Lefi the Medrash, that Noach built the Mizbeach in Yerushalayim, so in the Beis HaMikdash, so he says it could be that it had a din of a carbon on a Mizbeach, and therefore, even though there's no Reach Nichayach by a bama, when somebody brings a carbon on a bama, there's no Reach Nichayach, but by Noach, there was a Reach Nichayach, because Noach built the Mizbeach in the Makam HaMikdash, like the Rambam says. The Rambam is Mayrich, and Adam brought over there, Noach brought over there, everyone brought karbanos there, Hevel brought karbanos there, right? Why Vayarach Hashem es Reach Nichayach? What's going on? The Teretz is because that's Noach brought it in the Beis HaMikdash, so that's why there was a Reach Nichayach. So again, what does your Meir Simcha say? Ein Reach Nichayach by a bama. There's no Reach Nichayach by a bama. If there's no Reach Nichayach by a bama, so how could this pasuk say Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem? HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, I'm not gonna smell the Reach Nichayach, be referring to bamas? There is no Reach Nichayach by a bama. There never was. So I found that one of the Meshech Chachmas that have the Perush on the bottom, he asked the kasha, and he blibes Tzarchi and Gadol. He says he doesn't know. Tzarchi and Remeir Simcha Alain is Saiser himself. So I was looking around, and I found somebody, not sure who it is. I found a sefer called Tzitz HaSadet, and he has a ganze sefer about karbanis, the Beis HaMikdash, and he wants to say a mahalach like this in Remeir Simcha. Remeir Simcha at the end of his shtickle in our parsha, he says, "V'heirani lozeha Eben Ezra." The Eben Ezra was the one that was ma'ayir him to this pshat, Ye'uyim b'dvarav hakdoshim. If you look at the Eben Ezra, it's almost impossible to understand. It's really not pashut. But the Eben Ezra says, read you Lashon, Velo Ariach Bereiach v'atam ki kvoid Hashem moli shamayim v'aretz v'kasav al Noach v'yarach Hashem es Reach HaNichayach v'atam shelo yakabel oila acharei kein mikem. So what Remeir Simcha is learning is that what the Eben Ezra is trying to say is that Kvod Hashem Malei Shemayim V'Aretz. You could bring a carbon anywhere, just like you find by Noach. Vayarech Hashem Bereiach Nichochachem. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, Lo Yekabel Oila Achrei Kein Mikem. I'm not going to be Mekabel from you. So if you look at the Even Ezra in Parshas Noach says, where did Noach bring the carbon? He Lahedya says not like the Medrash. Noach brought the carbon on the Hare Ararat, as they state in Even Ezra. It was a Bama. It was not in Yerushalayim. He's chaylik on the Medrash. So if that's the case, Vayarech Hashem Bereiach Nichochachem, what's going on? It's a Bama. So Remeir Simcha was saying this Mahalach in the Even Ezra, Vaisdais holds that there is a Reach Nichochachem even by a Bama. That's how the Even Ezra goes. So Lefi, this Even Ezra, Zakter Meir Simcha, that you could say this shtickle that Velo Ariach Bereiach Nichochachem is referring to the Bama. But Avada Remeir Simcha in the when earlier in the Akdama to Vayikra and all the way back in Parshas Noach, he's going with the Mahalach that Ein Reach Nichochachem by Obama, that there's not. So we have a machlekes here. And the Even Ezra's l'shitasei, and Remeir Simcha is in two shtiklach is going in one Mahalach, and in this shtikl he's going in a different Mahalach. In our parsha, he's going with the Even Ezra that holds that there is a Reach Nichochachem by Obama. But in the Parshas before, he's going with the Mahalach that there is no Reach Nichochachem by Obama. So that's what the Tzitz HaSadah wants to for that Remeir Simcha was going only in this shtickle was going like the shita of the Even Ezra, and the Even Ezra l'shita say from Noach that by Noach there was a Reach Nichochachem even though it was a Bama. So this is a very nice shtickle, but what was bothering me was that l'chayra we have a often Mishnah in Gemara in Zvachim. The Gemara in Zvachim in the Mishnah in Zvachim and Daf Kuf Yud Beis, I think, the Mishnah says that ein Reach Nichochachem by Obama. So how could you go say the Meshech Chachma is going like the Even Ezra who holds that there is a Reach Nichochachem by Obama? It's often a Mishnah. The Even Ezra didn't miss the Mishnah. Okay, fine. Sometimes you could say that the Even Ezra was just going with Pshat in the Pasuk and he wasn't working with the Chazals. He's saying how he learned Pshutei Shal Mikra. But L'chayra, Remeir Simcha should have said something that this doesn't stem with the Mishnah of Ein Reach Nichochachem by Obama, that there is no Reach Nichochachem by Obama. So what's going on? How could this be Lahedya, not like a Mefurish Mishnah? And Ba'ayid, L'chayra, Pashat, you can make a cheshbon that is very nice that Remeir Simcha in Parshas Noach brings that Noach, when he built what he built, was the Mizbeach in Yerushalayim. That's the Medrash. That's how the Medrash goes. And that's why there was a Reach Nichochachem, because it wasn't a Bama. But the Talmud Bavli Zichur doesn't hold like this. The Talmud Bavli brings rayas in Gemara and Zvachim, brings etliche rayas from Noach about Hilchas Bama. So the Talmud Bavli Zichur holds it was a Bama. And the Talmud Bavli still says, and the pasuk still says, "Vayarech Hashem Bereiach Nichochachem." So by Noach's Bama, there was a Reach Nichochachem. So how does the Bavli stem with itself? This is really the kasha. L'chayra, Noach built a Bama, and there was Reach Nichochachem. And then in that same parak, it says that Ein Reach Nichochachem b'Bama. So the Talmud Bavli Alein is l'chayra astira. So it's not just a kasha on Remeir Simcha and the Even Ezra. The l'chayra, they're missing the boat. It's l'chayra astira in the Gemara Alein. So I saw the Taisus Yantiv, and that Mishnah says Ein Reach Nichochachem b'Bama. The Taisus Yantiv says that you have to take out the word Nichochachem. All the Mishnah was saying was Ein Reach b'Bama. There's no reach, there's no smell, and it was just coming to teach you a halacha that you're not allowed the halacha is by a mizbeach, if you roast it before you put it on, if you roast part of the imurim before you put them onto the mizbeach, then you missed the boat. That you're not yaitz in the mitzvah of Aktorah. But by a bama, there's no such halacha because there's no din of reach by a bama. But the Taisus Yamtiv says don't have the word nichayach in the Mishnah. So according to the Taisus Yamtiv, what comes out? It comes out that avada there is nichayach by a bama. There's two things. There's the Mishnah in Zvachim says there's l'shem reach and there's l'shem nichayach. So reach, you're right, you don't have by a bama, and that's why you're allowed to roast it before you put it onto the mizbeach, before you put it onto the bama. But nichayach, avada you have by a bama. And the Rambam, when he brings the lashon of nichayach, the Rambam says, the Rambam's lashon is nichayach. What's nichayach? What's nichayach? He says that nichayach is that the reich, the smell of the aktaras, should be l'shem nachas ruach lefanai. That's what nichayach is. So lefizeh l'chayr it's arap the kasha, the kasha that we asked, because there's really what we're coming out is that. So when the Mishnah says Ein Reich Nichayach by a bama, there's two pshatim. It's not just straight up. There's the pashup pshat like the Meshech Chochma goes in Parshas Vayikra and he goes in Parshas Noach that there's no Reich Nichayach. There's nothing. There's no nachas ruach at all by a bama. But now we see that really, like this Taisus Yantiv, that what the Mishnah means. The Mishnah doesn't mean Ein Reach Nichayach by a bama. The Mishnah is saying Ein Reach by a bama, but avada Nichayach there is by a bama. Oibazei by Noach, it's pashut that Talmud Bavli is not a stira in and of itself. Why is Talmud Bavli not a stira? Because we asked if it's a bama, how could by Yorech Hashem is Reach Nichayach? What do you mean? There is Nichayach. There is Nichayach by a bama, and Even Ezra, we asked, how could the Even Ezra hold there's Reach Nichayach by a bama? How could he say the same thing that by Noach there was a Reach Nichayach? Because there still is a Nichayach by a bama. There's a Reach Nichayach by a bama. All the Mishnah was saying was Ein Nichayach by Ein Reach by a bama was saying that you can't roast it before. And like by the Mizbeach, that it's usher to roast it because you have to do the Aktara on you have to do the Aktara on the full Aktara on the Mizbeach. I saw Rabbi Yankel Lieberman in Zavach Yankiv talks about this Indian also over there. He has a sefer on Paras Chatas. He also goes a shtickle like this Mahalach Ayin Sham because Biskarov had a kasha, but that's the shtickle. So Kamtais, the way we're answering this Meshech Chachma is that the Meshech Chachma over here, the reason why he's not Seiser himself is because there's two Shitas. Over here, he's going like the Even Ezra, and the Even Ezra holds there is a Reach Nichayach by a bama, and in Vayikra and in Parshas Noach, he's going with the Mahalach of the Medrash that Noach built it in the Beis Hamikdash, and there really is no Reach Nichayach by a bama, and that's the pshat with the Meira, with the Rambam and the Meira, that the reason why there's no Reach Nichayach by a bama because there's coming la fuke avodah zara. But Avada, the Meshech Chachma is not a stira because there are two shitas, and here he's going like one shita, and there he's going like a different shita.